Car forums are gone, and while you may think it's just because of social media, the story of the rise and fall of our favorite pages like AudiZine, DSM, and Automotive Everything starts back even before the millennial MySpace took over the internet, and its history is a bit worse than most remember. Dear God. I'm Alex Martini with 2 underscores on Instagram, and today we're talking about cars. Because when you look at just the sheer number of these sites going down like a Valley Fair ride, it's not looking good. But before we go into why they failed, we need to talk about why did forums get so popular to begin with, especially for the car scene in the early 2000s. I spent the beginning years of car building on these forums, so I'm pretty passionate about this one. My first time jumping in was when I picked up a 1994 3000 GT SL. I didn't even know there was a VR4 option at the time. The very first account I created online was on 3si.org. I sat in awe on the cover photo looking at VR4s that had more money invested in them than the college tuition I was about to pay. And this was all the way back in 2010. Fast forward to my time owning B7A4s, C5A6s, those are the ugly B5s, driving 300 horsepower first gen TTs, and dreaming of the day that I would own an Audi R8. I came across AudiZine, I think that's how you say it, a forum dedicated to Audi. I learned about Rotiform wheels on that page when Brian was still slinging wheel deals before he became the chief strategy officer of Hoonigan or Wheel Pros or whatever it is now. But then some really weird things started to happen on these forums, and that's what I think ultimately killed them. In 2003, 2 people known as Alex Welch and Darren Crystal saw that more and more mobile phones came with cameras attached to the flip-out flange portion of them, and at the same time, sharing digital photos was incredibly expensive. The solution was a website that we would come to know as PhotoBucket. It became a site that was actually pretty impressively huge. It housed over 2% of all US internet traffic back in 2006 and became valued at over $30 million in just 2 short years. With over 15 billion images hosted on its server since then, it quickly became the home for anyone to add photos and share those photos across sites like eBay, websites, and most importantly, message boards. This was the whole principle of what PhotoBucket was. You see, the forums of 3SI and VW Vortex and more weren't exactly massive profit centers. They weren't making a ton of money. The opposite actually is kind of what most of these forums were. The sponsorship dollars of banners and business posts were at its peak a couple $1,000s a month. And even with 10 to 15 of those brands, it wasn't enough to pay for full-time moderators, let alone web storage for the thousands of photos coming in from young, excited car builders that were creating how-tos and must-buys. And this was before even there was a ton of money in the digital space. The solution though was PhotoBucket, a get-out-of-jail-free card to keep costs down that ultimately turned into one of the pegs on the chair breaking underneath what we would know as car forums. The downfall of forums came 10 years before we know it, because in 2005, after News Corp, owner of Fox News, purchased MySpace, they set their sights on the photo sharing site that dominated that same social media's website. But that was only after MySpace had blocked videos that were embedded from image hosting sites, something that PhotoBucket invested a ton of money and time into. And this marked the beginning of the end. At its peak, PhotoBucket had over 100 million members on its site who uploaded more than 4 million images per day. But it still apparently wasn't enough. The images of PhotoBucket would spend the next decade or so getting hacked, scanned, stolen, destroyed by hackers, and competition that pretty much had it on its downfall leading into 2017, which really put the nail in the coffin for the brand because they removed free access for image storing and locked it behind a $399 annual plan for anyone who wanted their photos, destroying every single car forum's valuable pages that had things like wheel fitment, install guides, and more. By the time forums were quick to react and offer alternatives with actual storage capacity, the early 2000s posts, the original posts that we know that had all the blood, sweat, and tears poured into them and had stood the test of time, had seen the users never log back in. They had grown up and had families. They were forever sitting in the Halo 2 multiplayer lobby in hopes that the servers would come back on. The genetics of the internet changed so fast over the years, but never as fast as the competition around social networking. Car folks, people like you and people like me, we use it every day. But its introduction shattered the core fundamentals of what car forums were also intended to do. And let me explain. In 2005, MySpace was leagues ahead of Facebook and YouTube. Sites like Instagram, Twitter, and WeChat were just ideas. And the concept of being able to speak to people in real time on topics that were organized seemed like the perfect evolution of car forums. What was perfect for the masses edged out the niches. And while in this case, we lost the next really important thing to forums: details. The shark pit that ultimately became Silicon Valley's never-ending appetite to create apps and sites that fought for your attention continued to grow. Snapchat became a thing. Instagram vowed to be for the artist. And that went well. But car forums tried to adapt to this mentality with none of the budget of the other guys and more stubbornness. Hell, in 2012, I started my own group on Facebook versus a forum called Wisconsin Car Enthusiast Club. And while sites like Facebook have proper tools to build forum-style groups now in 2024, it took way too long. And nowadays, groups are almost exclusively built for small interests or just another place for people like us to waste our time on a Friday night while everyone else is socializing and we're looking at marketplace ads. But it lacked the intuitiveness to search for topics. You couldn't do it, which is still why sometimes you do see activity on forums. And it's also why some people think forums can grow again. Some pages are growing back, which is a good thing because the sticky and extremely detailed DIY and how-to threads taught me so much when I was working on cars that just aren't usually modified. But the push towards forums still had a fundamental growing kryptonite to them, especially in 2023. Attention. The attention span of all of us is coming down, whether you want to admit it or not. The days of making a car build video that is 30 minutes long is exclusive to the channels with millions of subscribers and a dedicated fan base, and no one wants to watch them if you aren't already somebody. The S2000 series we're doing on this channel is going to break this mold or I will break the car. TikTok, IG Reels, YouTube Shorts have made consuming information and content even easier than ever to maintain our 8.25 second attention span, but forums lack the massive text bubbles, the wild audio effects, the 17 layered animations, the weird inspirational music playing in the background of the video so you feel better about yourself before you scroll to the next thing. For most pages now, forums are just text-based 9-year-old pieces of information with broken photo bucket links and a general disdain for anyone that's new to the block. The days of forums haven't gotten more efficient, really, unless you're on Facebook. Successful forums, real successful forums, require massive commitments. It's why you see so many Discord channels rise and then fall and just never come back. What was once staff are now brand managers. What were once just events are now social activations. Members are now customers, and it can all feel a bit crummy. When people aren't honest, it just kind of puts a bad taste in everyone's mouth. But it can't be all that bad, right? They're just forums. The way you and I could both see it is a proverbial changing of the guard, maybe. An opportunity to jump in and do things slightly different and take nod to what already worked in the past. After all, I loved forums. And even though I might make fun of myself right now by saying this, the solution could be in brands doing it all over again. Let me explain. Build threads on Martini Works should look like build threads from the past because that's the inspiration. Blogs and articles are super detailed and almost boring to read, but they help you along every step of the way, just like forums. And the hopeful goal that even though I try to sell you stuff to mod your car, I don't have to sell my soul to do it because I just want to do cool car stuff with my friends. And I think that seems like a fair trade. Car forums marked an almost impressive peak of the automotive car scene. I would put the growth of car forums to surpass the influence of even the Fast and the Furious and what it did for us in the early 2000s. This was the place where most of us remember the pain of asking a question already asked. We remember the thread showing our dream wheel setup, even though most people would hide their offset specs for no particular reason. And forums can and should come back. The days of how it looks, though, might change. There's so many people that came out of forums starting businesses and brands and personalities. But where were you when forums were alive, and what should we talk about next? I'm Alex, Alex.Martini with 2 underscores on Instagram, and today we talked about cars. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.